Signs of the Southland, Monday, June 13th, 2022. Guys, the NCAA Super Regionals for baseball, despite not including Georgia Tech, pretty good stuff. We saw Texas knock off ECU in just an absolutely feral ECU environment this weekend. Arkansas walked off UNC. UConn has given Stanford a scare, or our podcast favorite team, Stanford. Lots of good games on the docket, and most of the ACC teams have lost except the fake ACC Notre Dame. So there is that.
Yeah, it's been a good weekend for it. Been around the house in the afternoon yesterday, and just doing chores and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously I watched Friday and Saturday too, but it made for an eventful Sunday afternoon of sports. And I feel like outside of maybe like obviously March Madness weekend 2 and weekend 1, but outside of like NFL, I don't really like lock into sports on Sundays all that much, despite being a big baseball guy, I guess. You'd think I'd watch more Sunday night baseball, but it made for good TV. I was enthralled, and folding laundry through all of that.
Yeah, it's a whole deal, and a whole very good deal, especially when squeeze play is on. And we kind of talked about squeeze play in 7 innings last week and the week before in terms of tournament coverage. But they are, especially when they go to the quad box to cover all of the games, it's the good stuff right there.
Yeah. It's it made for entertaining, and I don't even think it necessarily needed to be, a quad box or tri box type situation to be locked in. Like even individual games, like, am I an ECU fan? No. Was I watching that whole game with riveted intent until, well, I guess not so much Sunday because of the whole like all afternoon rain delay thing, but.
And also the Texas leading 8-1 after the first inning thing.
Yeah, that was also tough. Ooh. But no, like the Stanford UConn game was great. Auburn Oregon State was pretty good. Louisville Texas A&M, that was a little more low scoring, but nonetheless still very exciting. So yeah, no, I don't know. I was at the point where I kind of wanted to see ACC teams win to like prove points, but then I kind of got where I was like, screw it. Who cares?
Conference loyalty is bad.
Yeah.
The SEC chant is annoying and nothing more. Do not put stock into it. Mr. Purdy, what did you see from Super Regional weekend that interested you?
I watched that Texas game winning hit. What was that, Saturday? Whenever they won 9-8 or whatever. That was kind of sad at the point.
It was depressing.
ECU's crowd was so cool. Like, just like they had people like just standing at the wall behind there. There's more people there than are at an average Oakland Athletics game right now. Like it was like, hey, this is cool. Like they're finally getting their moment. Like I really enjoyed that. I actually did watch Sunday Night Baseball because it was the Angels, and any excuse I can watch the Angels at a reasonable time I do, because when in the hell else am I going to see Mike Trout play? Well, Tiny didn't play, which is kind of sad. We also found out that Alex Bregman won the infamous fantasy football league. Yeah. That caused the slap of Jack Peterson, which is really funny. Trout started talking about it. It was really cool. Yeah, I was not as in tune on that this weekend just because it was kind of the end of it. I had it on at various points, but squeeze play also makes it very easy to just kind of like you shouldn't watch that on background, because then you really aren't going to know what the hell's going on that much.
Yeah, that is fair. So, it was tough watching squeeze play in a bar the previous weekend, I will say, like when we were just like out and about, like on vacation kind of thing. Cause it was like, oh, like I can't hear what they're saying. They keep cutting between games. Like, what's going on? But
I'll just note the Stanford UConn game happening now is a uniform catastrophe. UConn's wearing navy blue and Stanford's wearing black. That just should never happen.
I will say I have the football version of that Stanford uniform sitting in my closet right now. So
you have that black. It's not a bad looking uni, not gonna lie, but
in my defense, I have two points of explanation. Number one, it's a Christian McCaffrey jersey.
Okay, there you go.
And he never wore, I don't think he ever actually wore the black one, which makes it even funnier. Number two, it has the white outline around the numbers, which makes it there's much more contrast.
It was just the
a
red
much
wouldn't be
better
great.
look.
Yeah.
But
While we're talking jerseys, I do have my brand new Lorela Kubai jersey on that I bought. I might be the only one in the world that has one other than Lorela Kubai. So I hope other people buy her jersey eventually, but I'll be wearing it at the Gateway Center in a couple weeks when they come down here.
yeah, she's been getting good minutes for.
She gets some
for
minutes,
Liberty.
yeah. Although, except when I turn the game on, she's never playing. But
Wait,
that said, why does she need to play?
which weekend
Sabrina
are they down
Ionescu
here?
UNESCO got a triple double in 3/4. I'll say a couple days ago. So they got that level talent on the floor right now. They don't really need Kubai as much as other teams maybe do. But
Yeah. Looks like
anyways.
they're down here the 24th of
24th.
June and
Yep.
the 12th of August.
Yep, I got my tickets for the June game. I imagine I'm going to go to that 12th game as well because it's not that expensive. But
Yeah.
well, we did actually have a tech person do things this weekend. Should we talk about that?
What a segue, Mr. Purdy. We did have a Georgia Tech person appear at NCAA Track and Field Championships, the final event of Georgia Tech's athletic calendar. Nicole Fegans raced in the women's 5,000 meters. This was at 7:25 p.m. Eastern time last, what was that, Saturday?
Yeah.
Yep.
In Eugene, Oregon at Hayward Field. I'm never going to get the name right. I'm never going to learn it. It's very stacked field. We talked a little bit about some of the contenders last week. If you're interested in that preview, despite the event already having happened, go check that out from last week. Fegans finished about 30 seconds off her best time. She posted a 16:05 compared to her personal best of 15:37. NC State's Caitlin Tui won this honestly by a pretty wide margin over Florida's over a runner from Florida, but Florida's second place finish in this clinched the women's track and field championship for them. I think it may have been the team championship, but I'm not entirely certain. But yeah, that is the final event of the NCAA calendar for Georgia Tech. 21-22 is now over. Before we get to our next segment, I want to kick it over to you, Jack. How you were watching this with me. We were chatting about it a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you feel like she did? Obviously, we were at the times. It's not pretty that way. How do you feel that Nicole did? And how do you feel the season went for her as a whole?
I mean, the start of that race felt a lot similar to the one that I saw her run on campus for the Invitational, where she was like, she wasn't really, I think she was I forgot if she was leading or not here, but like definitely was pushing the pace though. Like she was holding fifth for about a lap or two there. So like, okay, this is kind of pretty similar. Just run hard. Just gonna have to see what happens. And then by about 3/4 of that race, we've watched more commercials than camera time on Fegans, which was sad. But I mean, also it's like a 15-minute race. They're gonna put their commercials in there because it's ESPN. So she just fell back. She also fell back quickly was the thing. Like she was there and then she fell into like back of the pack of the first group and then was ninth and then you just never saw her again on the feed. And then once the race was over, they weren't even showing the last of the finishers like an Olympic, like you would when you're watching the Olympics or something like that. So I don't know. It was also ideal running conditions. Like it was like 60s or whatever. It was not, there was no wind. It was overcast, so there was no sun.
It was sprinkling too.
Sprinkling a little bit. It's a little bit of moisture. Like there was no reason why. And like if you wanted to, there was no better running day that could have existed for people that trying to go fast as well. So in that sense, I'm like, that kind of sucks. She went 16:05, but then also makes me think, okay, if they're running in like Phoenix or whatever, like is this like a 16:16 or something like that? Like
yeah.
So that makes me start wondering.
Today.
It was 95 in Atlanta today. So like that makes you wonder, like, all right, how like was the plane ride a problem? Like what was her train? Like there's questions I don't have the answers to right now, but that make me wonder if there was just something else lingering that was, or she just had a bad day. You never know. But yeah, I think we all would have liked a little bit more at the end here. But I mean, I do not want this to take away from the fact that Nicole is by far the best runner that Tech has ever had on either of these teams. So we are super proud that she even made it to Eugene and made a final.
Yeah. And Jake, you wrote a book on her for today for a Yellow Jacket Roundup. What did you think of this and how would you wrap up track season as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, not gonna lie, you kind of hope that one of the greats goes out with a bang. Not necessarily like wins or anything like that, because NC State is to cross country and distance running what I don't know, Alabama is to football. They're just like really good, right? So your expectations have to be measured. But I mean, regardless, I don't think this takes away at all from the incredible performance that she's had over 5 years, and that's one that extends beyond the track. So cross country and track don't really get a fair shake, right? And as the only media outlet that covers them, we are just as guilty of that as anyone else. But like, just not only on the track or on the cross country course, but just as like a known leader amongst athletes as well. Again, it doesn't diminish the extensive list of accolades that have come her way over the years. Off the top of my head, I think it's 8-time All ACC. Maybe it's I think it's 8-time All ACC, 5-time
Did
All
you not just write
American
the bit on this?
Yeah,
Don't you have these memorized?
Record
Jake
holder,
had a 9-hour workday. It's fine.
record holder in every distance event on the track. The key critical piece to women's cross country undergoing a 3-ish year-long renaissance, a team that hadn't really done anything in 16 years, became a top 20 NCAA team there for a flash in the pan. Like that is about as good of a career as you can ask of anyone. 8-time conference finisher, sorry, not conference finisher, all conference we said, but conference record holder in the 10K as well. So again, top to bottom, you can't ask for a better like impact than that, right? Yeah, like, oh man, maybe I hope somebody wins a title or something like that, but you're asking for gravy after that. That's the head and shoulders star of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, that will do it for Georgia Tech's 2021-2022 athletic year. The athletic year officially ends, what is it, June 31st? June 31st, not July 1st. All right, and
Whenever the College
22
World
will
Series
start.
is done, basically.
Basically, I think the College World Series is the last event left across all.
I think that's the last thing. There's already updated rosters for next season on RamblinWrec.com, so they're moving on too.
As they move on, so do we, but not without giving out some silverware. Let's talk about some end of season awards. We have picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories, not around 10. That's bad on us. 9 categories.
I got one for the end. It'll be all right.
Oh, a surprise award.
Yes.
That's exciting and also scary as a podcast producer.
Hey.
You can edit it out.
That's after 45 minutes or however long this is going to take of dude remembering. Like, we're going to be in the zone by then.
And we've already done 40 minutes of dude remembering to prepare for this. So, all right, let's get into it. Let's start our end of season awards with best game. Mr. Jake Grant, will you read out our nominees?
Yes. So we originally tried to each pick one for all of these, but then, dude remembering happened and game remembering happened and that time when remembering happened. So there's quite a lengthy list. We're going to be hashing through, maybe getting to a unanimous one, maybe getting to one each and then talking from there to a unanimous. But in terms of nominees, best game, the UConn women's basketball game for the uninitiated. Georgia Tech swamped UConn, who was without Paige Beckers, of course, but still the most prolific game in the program's history. So, there's that, and it's also Tech's highest home attendance, Tech's highest student attendance game as well. So really got the program out in front of a lot of people on national television on ESPN. In addition, we've got UGA softball. That was a 12-3 win in Athens midweek. Georgia Tech had not beat UGA in many years is a good way to put that. This is, how do we say, definitely by a wide margin, the biggest win over them in program history. A ranked team, a team that Tech has really struggled to get over the hump against, and has really been a kind of an anti-foil to Tech in the past decade or so. Sticking with that theme, we had UGA baseball series. The Athenians were defeated by Georgia Tech at home and on the road, but the home got our vote there. Georgia Southern baseball to close the season. Pitt volleyball, much like women's basketball, that 3-2 win was the most important in the program's history in terms of regular season wins. UNC football, we had to give football a bone, and to be fair, legitimately great game. Penn State volleyball to open the season, Ohio State volleyball, the final win of the year, and then John Medich's start to open the series against number 3 Miami round out the nominees. I know that was long-winded. I'm long-winded. You listen to this podcast, you knew that was a thing. All right, boys.
Jake has too much wind. Jack, let's start with you. We have our list of nominees. What is your pick, and how are you looking at it?
Yeah, best game. It's a mix of, okay, how well do we actually perform, like, in the game, like what it wasn't these aren't, all of these games here are not, well, okay, the football game was absolutely a fluke win, but the rest of these are not flukes whatsoever. Like, this was very much, they were statement games. They set us up for later in these seasons as like, okay, this is who we've got. We know how good we are now. Now in the moment, I was at the UConn women's basketball game, and that was the first, I never thought I'd have the moment where I'm like, am I about to storm the court? Is this really about to happen? Only one person did, sadly, and they got tackled. I learned after the fact we could have afterwards if enough of us went. That said, they don't let you sit courtside for women's basketball games, so as students, so we didn't really have the throng that could have really done it, sadly. But that said, in the moment, it was just like, is this happening? Like, no other game on this list I think we would have said that. Tech football at the time was like, it was still believable. UJ softball, baseball, there's enough randomness to where I think, okay, yeah, it can happen. In the Ohio State volleyball game, we knew we were that good. Like that, I think getting to Louisville was the goal at that point. I did not watch that Medich baseball game, so I don't have a comment on that one. But I mean, my vote is this. Well, UConn women's basketball game is 1,000% my vote.
Well, see, that has two things going for it. One, pardon my French, that thing was a total ass kicking, and two,
yes.
Ooh, don't cuss. I have to edit this stuff.
It was at home, and I don't know what it is about being at a game live that strongly biases me. That it just doesn't hit. It doesn't hit the same when you watch a game on TV. UGA softball, really run rule. It wasn't tense, right? UGA baseball. That was a home game too, but a great win. Pitt volleyball, arguably just as program wide important as UConn women's basketball, but
absolutely.
Like we were in the building for the women's basketball game, right? I think to be a little bit of a contrarian, I'd probably still say Pitt volleyball, but if we're picking one, it's got to be UConn women's basketball. We're not going to get to a consensus on anything other than that, and
yeah,
it deserves its time in the sun.
I mean, we beat the Titans. I mean, yeah, South Carolina is probably the best right now, but it's like, I mean, this is like us beating Bama in football. Like, it's like, holy crap, we actually pulled it off.
Normies knows what it means to have done that, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Also, UConn had, I forgot her name, but like a Georgian there that drew a lot of pro UConn people
from Alpharetta. That was the thing. They had someone from Alpharetta on their
Winder.
team.
Winder. It was a
Winder. Okay, I'm thinking of Notre Dame that had someone from Alpharetta.
Yeah, Notre Dame had, yeah, but so like it was like not necessarily a pro Tech crowd either. Like in the end, it kind of was by the end, but it's just like, no, there was a lot of people. There was a lot of
people are there to watch UConn. People are there to watch UConn as a brand. Not UConn as a team,
they are
but
women's
UConn
basketball.
for what they mean.
Yeah, like it's Gino in the squad. Like, I mean, I went to Tech's Duke game in 2019, not because of the basketball, but because Coach K was there. I went to this game because Gino was there too. I mean, to support us as well. But I'm like, I don't know when I'll be in the same building as Gino Auriemma ever again in my life. I got to be there.
I was gonna say, aren't you wearing a Lorella Kubai WNBA
I am.
jersey?
I am.
You were
I
gonna
am.
be at that basketball game, Jack.
I was, but I mean, it's there. There's. I want to acknowledge all. I mean, there's a lot of sides of it. Like, as much as I am a pro tech homer, at the same time, I love the legacy of everything in sports enough to be like, okay, Gino was a contributing factor.
Akshay, what did I tell you when we bought women's basketball season tickets?
They'll be worth it at some point.
They'll be worth it just for the women's basketball game against UConn.
Okay, that is true. That is why I paid, let's see, Cash Texas for men's, which got us a discount on women's. Yes.
Yep. But Akshay, is that your pick too?
I will agree with UConn women's basketball just so that we have consensus. I do not want the softball one to get lost, though. I think that is, it's not a turning point per se in a season because we knew that softball was good. And I do admit that there's some randomness inherent to stickball results in general, but that kind of butt kicking delivered in an opposing stadium to a rival is unrivaled, not pun not intended, in just like lore and vibes. There's nothing like that. And there's nothing that brings me greater schadenfreude than that sort of thing.
All right. I think that covers it. On to the next one.
To vibes. We move on to best vibes moment. Mr. Purdy, will you read off our nominees unless Mr. Grant has something to introduce us with?
I was going to say, this is Georgia Tech Sports' #1 vibes-based podcast. So we've really been preparing for this one.
I think we did some good ones here. So we've got the Jeff Sims 59-yard run during Mayhem at Mercedes, which in the moment, my goodness, that we all thought we were good.
Still a stupid name for a series, by the way, but we're gonna step past that for now.
The home volleyball win against Western Kentucky to get us into the Sweet 16 of the tournament, and the team did the horse with us, which was super cool, and they all loved it. That made for some great social media fodder. This one I put this one on here because it was great in the moment. But Loda Mylotzen made a key layup with time expiring to save the Clemson win before that went into overtime. And at the time, her layups I think are questionable at some points, but it was in the moment. It was like, oh my goodness, we made a clutch bucket near the end of that regulation. I just didn't think the team had it, so that was great. The Cardiac Jackets did a bunch of stuff, including coming back in the home closer against Georgia Southern. What was that, 13-12, something crazy like that at the end. I sadly did not watch the end of that game, even though I went to the beginning. Josh Pastner, I forgot which game it was, but he broke his face shield on the ground. Just delightful vibe moment. And then back to those games at Stageman softball, baseball, when we won in Athens, and you could hear the Yellow Jackets chants on TV. Great time. So that's what we got.
I'm telling you, Schadenfreude is an incredible feeling. There's a reason why I know that word in German specifically.
We were mid podcast when the Loda Mylotten layup happened.
Yeah, we committed a rights violation for that one.
I don't think that's actually a rights violation.
It's not, but I like the bit.
It is a good bit.
And it was a great moment.
People finally know that we did write a Heisman hologram coach replacement article, but never.
Hold on, no. There's no we. I wrote the article. You just happened to include it in something else.
I just appreciate that we've referenced it for more than 3 years now, but nobody has ever actually read it. So, anyways, my bit for this, I know that we're probably not going to go with this, but this podcast does not talk about football enough. That UNC game, that was good vibes. That was good vibes.
The vibes were great.
It was, at the very least, that is my favorite moment of the Jeff Collins era so far. It was a great game. That run was incredible. The fan turnout was a little bit small and a little bit disappointing, but I don't know. I had a nice little time. However, I think I'll go with Western Kentucky as my vibes moment.
I think in the moment of that UNC game, we didn't know if the concept of playing a game at Mercedes was really a good idea. And in the moment of like,
still don't know, by the way.
We still don't know. Well, I mean, we haven't had the real test yet, I would say. Like we'd realized UNC was a fraud, and so now we've got the national TV Clemson game this year. But for this particular moment, it's like, okay, there might be something to playing in the big stadium and making it a home game. We had like it was our paint on the ground and everything, and just creating an event, like a much more cohesive event out of our games. And in the moment, I think it was like, holy crap, this is kind of paying off maybe just a little bit here. Also, it's a great recruiting tool too. Be like, hey, you could have these moments here every year if you come here. And so I think the potential energy that came from that run was critical. That said, also going to vote for Western Kentucky basketball because nothing's better than doing the horse with the actual teams.
It's Western Kentucky. I really don't think there's an argument here, considering both of you said the same thing. That
game was packed too, by the way. Packed. It was amazing. Yeah. Electric factory. I love O'Keefe.
I will allow some grace for the Jeff Sims and the UNC football moment. However, my personal feelings on the current state of the football program are affecting my judgment. And that is all I will say there. However, I will say also like I led this part with the schadenfreude of hearing Yellow Jackets in opposing stadiums and rival stadiums especially does not ever get old. That is number 3 on my list.
Okay. I got a comment here. Being in Louisville with Georgia Tech parents cheering Yellow Jackets, and the emotional turmoil that caused me not being able to join in for fear of getting, how do we say? My parents would have made me walk back to the airport. That's how I'll put that.
How far? Okay, well, as a
I was also wearing red. Oh my goodness, it was hard. Like we were under the landing pattern, so like, maybe it would have worked out, but like that was tough. Those softball parents were rowdy and they brought the energy. So good on them for supporting the team and all that good stuff.
All right, let's move on to most impactful performance. I will read out the nominees for this one. Your first nominee, Zach Maxwell's start versus Tennessee in the regional final for baseball. Second is Josiah Siegel's long relief stint versus Campbell that got Georgia Tech to the regional final. John Medich's start versus Miami. We've already talked about that before. That was versus number 3, Miami. Back-to-back wins over Athens and UConn in the same week. We already talked about the UConn game, but the Athens game was there as well. And Ben Reuter's ACC championship push that nearly won it for Georgia Tech. Mr. Grant, would you like to start with your most impactful performance?
Yeah, sure. So I think there was 2 schools of thought that you could have taken with respect to this. You could have seen it as a most impactful team performance, which I think perhaps the women's basketball UGA UConn Wombo combo there is referencing. Totally legitimate. But I was really thinking about it when I was trying to get my nominees and my thoughts together about an individual performance. And it's ironic that both of the ones that kind of rang truest for me were individual performances. And I know it's recency bias to have 3 baseball pitching related things, because I don't know. There's just something about baseball and pitching and where, you put the ball in your hands and you run. Like Connor Thomas, give us 9 innings, win the baseball game, 2019 style. Like that's what Zach Maxwell did against Tennessee. That was the performance all of us had been waiting years to see from him. That was incredible. It was incredible. However, I think Ben Reuter and the golf team in general, for a team that got top 15 in the country, does not get enough play. I think even if that would have come up as a win, easy number 1. I'm between Ben and Zach. And if one of y'all feels strongly one way or the other, I could be convinced. I'm leaning golf just because golf is head case sport. But I think the significance of Zach Maxwell for him and his also long-term draftability stock and things like that after a gutty performance against the best lineup in the country definitely has its merits as well. So curious to see what y'all have to say.
I think that part about him having to do it against Tennessee is huge. Like it's that's really something to pull out the best stuff you've got against literally the barometer of how good college baseball is in a given season, and against their best dudes. And and also just the best dudes in the Southeast too. Like that's not nothing either, regardless of the country. So, I think Zach. I mean, granted, it's hard to. One performance is a lot to go off of. I mean, we also need to mention like the killer bees on the volleyball team just cohesively all at the same time, just wiping out teams left and right when they had the chance, which was I mean, that kind of goes into the vibe territory a little bit in terms of just like what it was to be at those games, but at the same time, it set a precedent for how good it was. And I one particular game is hard to point out for the volleyball team. I mean, possibly the Ohio State game actually, and just kind of coming back on that one. Even maybe the volleyball loss at the end of the year, because we still got a set off of them, which I think mattered as well. But I think if we're going single performance, Zach Maxwell is it for me.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing about sports that happen longer back, and I think what we see here is like, how do I put this? It's like the individual aspect in a team sport, right? In that it's hard. I think it's harder for a volleyball player to take over a match in the same way that specifically like a quarterback or a running back or a pitcher, like we said, maybe like if a basketball player is just, a Mike DeVoe, like 40 burger UGA demolition night. We didn't even have that on our list. But something like that, it just comes across different than like tennis, where you can help win doubles, but you're just one singles court. On volleyball, there are 6 athletes out there, and the killer bees were so good, or Awald and Kalf were so good, but like they're only 4 at bats a game. Great in the field too, but you know what I mean? Like I just don't know that like
your team also has to be good here as well. And I think we only put things of like, we had good teams here, like that matters as well. It's just like, okay, did it actually get like, did it matter in the grand scheme of things? That's why there's no Jahmyr Gibbs things on here. Like that dude was half our offense, but we weren't good. So I just didn't feel like it mattered.
Yeah. Akshay,
I'm gonna be the contrarian here, and I'm gonna go Athens, UConn back-to-back wins. I think that, and we talked about this before we started recording, that sets the tone for the entire year, right?
Yeah,
that's the type of team that this is going to be. It's going to take teams like UConn to wire to wire. It's going to take top 15 teams wire to wire, and Athens, and really put the fear of God in them, and win both of those, right? Yeah. Obviously things sort of stall out late in the year, but when you set the table like this and go through at least 80 to 85, if not 90% of the year, playing games with this gritty, hard nose, and we talked about it as like this Iowa football type of basketball, and you win games, you grind out results. It's huge, right?
If anything, we've got 2 different awards here. We've got most impactful performance and best individual showcase, something like that. Like we've got, like, I think you're right in that in terms of impact in the grand scheme of things, those 2 games probably did as much as anything for anyone on this campus, for any team on this campus. But in terms of, all right, this spot here was the most, let's say, most exceptional performance. Put it that way. Most exceptional single game performance. Zach Maxwell is, that's hard to beat. I would also point out Aaliyah Love's 26-point games, big, and other crazy Bergman kill games and whatnot. But yeah.
See, the thing is, there's so many of those Bergman games that it's hard to pick one.
Yeah, that's true. There wasn't one where she like got 50 or anything like that.
Wild card. ITA Southeastern's Andres Martin winning the singles and contributing to the doubles, as Tech goes 1-2-3 with McDaniel and Martin winning the doubles, Martin winning the singles, and Keshav Chopra winning the consolation bracket. So
it's a good mention. It's a good mention.
It's at least worth shouting out. I feel like we could, churn them out all
Dude,
night.
remember dude and dudette remember for another 3 hours.
It's better
Oh,
than
God.
therapy. What was I going to say?
Woof.
But I think Maxwell should get the most exceptional individual, and I agree with the women's basketball back to back. You can't really do much finer than that.
Good scheduling. Good scheduling.
Good,
Yeah.
great scheduling. That was a hell of a week. Moving right along, we just talked about impactful team performances. Excuse me. Let's talk about best team. We narrowed it down to 2 out of the 17 programs that Georgia Tech offers. Your 2 nominees here are Georgia Tech volleyball, who made it to the Elite 8, and Georgia Tech golf, who made it to the match play final, or the stroke play final of the NCAA championships. Mr. Grant, volleyball or golf?
We all know the answer. It's volleyball, but golf did deserve a mention here. They again fly under the radar, but it's volleyball. Elite 8, arguably best season in program history. Everyone in that starting lineup could feasibly have their jersey retired if Tech didn't have such draconian jersey retirement rules. It's volleyball. It's not close.
I don't have any complaints here, Mr. Purdy. Do you?
Yeah, I would say volleyball as well. I think we would have mentioned women's basketball if they won a tournament game. If they got to the Stanford game, we would have had a different discussion about that, because that would have shown, okay, they were able to get off that late season snide and make a difference, especially after they won with 45 points against Wake Forest in the ACC tournament. But yeah, no,
bizarre. It's gonna be a talking point for years, at least amongst folk like us.
Yeah,
that how bizarre the end of that season was as a whole.
I know that this spans 2 different coaching staffs, but the late season swoon, it's happened more often than not in the last couple of years. We'll unbox that one in a future episode. But
there's off season
pushing that one onto the back burner for another time. But it was definitely interesting to see a team that was so elite and so good. And usually think of a defense based success as something that's replicable. You're not relying on just every 3-pointer shot to fall or whatnot. But that's a different article. It's a different podcast. Volleyball, really tremendous. I know that it may not be the same next year, but man, was that special to watch it all come together all at once.
So
yeah, and they just beat teams into submission, right? Like, I mean, it sounds bad to say, but they just absolutely murdered teams. They came flying out of nowhere. It was just this very fast and fluid and not really physical per se. Like I don't think volleyball is a concept of physicality, but it's just a very fast and fluid and cohesive brand of volleyball.
It felt good.
That Collier and her team played, and it was just very, very impressive. Obviously, they fall in that Elite 8 game and can't advance to the Final Four. But the fact that they took a set off of it was Louisville, right? It wasn't Pitt. They didn't get Pitt in that game, but
no, they got Louisville, and they got destroyed by Louisville when they came here too. Like that match just was not close. And so getting a real set out of there and being and they were competitive in the other sets. It wasn't like they were like done for either. So like it was not a bad for a 3-1 loss. It was a very good 3-1 loss.
And I think another factor that adds to this is that and we'll talk about softball in a bit here, but it was a statement year for the ACC in this sport, right?
Yep.
They put 2 Final Four teams. They put 2 Final Four teams. They had like 3 or 4 Elite 8 teams.
Tech is or not Tech. The ACC's only had one other Final Four team to this point, right? It was
FSU was I think it was FSU who had made the Final Four in like 2013.
Yep.
Right.
And that's the crazy thing is this team wins every ACC title before this year. They would have won every ACC title before this year. I'm convinced. That's how good the conference was, that they are probably the 3rd best ACC team in history, and they are the 3rd best team this year.
It was just they didn't beat the 2 teams that were in front of them is that what it came down to. No. And those teams were just really good, really, really historically good. And
Mhm.
well, it turns out ironically that neither of them advanced to the championship game.
Well, freaking Nebraska. My God. How the hell did they do that?
The
That was
Midwest. It was a
wild.
great championship game. I will say
It
that. I
was.
watched
It
all
was.
of that.
Yeah.
It was enthralling.
ESPN had broken their deal with YouTube TV for like 3 days. So yeah, boy didn't watch that one, but I'm not salty.
He's totally not. Let's move on to most improved team. I think we've all come to a consensus on this one, so I will spoil the beans. It is Georgia Tech softball. I think we came into this year, Jake and I specifically, we're talking about this being a contract year for Coach Eileen Morales, given the last 4 or 5 years of her tenure and where the team had gone. They got off to a good start in the last couple of years, but it sort of hit a schneid. Took a couple of really nasty losses last year. Did not start the ACC schedule well last year at all, too. And this year they turned a corner. It turns out that adding another pitcher actually adding another pitcher that is really good helps the team out a lot, right? They made a monumental improvement on the mound because they had another quality arm to pair with Nelliman, and they got a lot out of the lower parts of their lineup this year, right? We saw Mallory Black make a huge improvement. Jinsaleo made a huge improvement in the field. Trisha Awald was as reliable as usual. Emma Kauf similarly consistent, right? So everyone contributed, everyone won, and they made it back to the NCAA tournament, right, for the first time in a decade, and they won a couple games. So really, really good season, really good team. Mr. Purdy, do you have anything else on the softball team that I did not?
I want to note this was also a historic year for the ACC in terms of just how good it was as well. So they like volleyball fell victim to wrong year to be great by our standards. And so, I mean, yeah, put this in last year, next year, and we'll see how different. I mean, this team is young too. Like there's going to be a lot of carryover going into next year. So we'll be all right. I'm forgetting, is Nelliman gone, or was she still here?
Nelliman's got 2 years. I think
2
we
years?
only
All right,
noted
okay.
that four regular starters were moving on.
Okay.
And I think
that's fine. I mean, and that's fine too. Like
we've got rotational.
We've got depth like that's the great thing about it. Like we talked about this before, but like Auburn Dupree didn't play a lot of the postseason. And it's not like, I mean, that wasn't making or breaking it for us, but it's like, okay, one of our reliable outfielders, she came in, she had a 2 for 3 day, but I mean, still, it's like, okay, the depth is there, which wasn't there before, notably in the pitching staff. If by some miracle we get a third in the recruiting process, that'd be incredible, because that makes your
transfer
whole weekend,
portal.
Transfer portal. Yeah, that makes your whole weekend kind of serviceable too, and you don't have to throw Blake for a gazillion pitch through for 500 pitches a weekend or whatever. But yeah, no, I mean, most improved is absolutely softball for sure. So,
yep.
Mr. Grant, how about you introduce your nominees for teams with most potential?
Yes, I will say before we dive in that all 3 of these teams have interesting caveats. The teams being women's tennis, and men's swimming and diving. Jack, I know you have particular, how do you say it? Expertise, interest, experienced with one of them. What do you got on swimming?
Swimming was great. Yeah, at the end of the year, I got to talk with the whole team that made NCAAs, with a couple of the other outlets, and I forgot which guy, one of the seniors was like, look at the rest of the table here. There's 2 seniors and 3 freshmen, or some 2 or 3 or 2, whatever. And he was like, yeah, this program's ready to launch. Like we've got freshmen that made NCAAs and with 5th year seniors. So the recruiting is working. The pipeline from Turkey is working for one, for sure. And has now reached a second iteration, basically. Like that's something. Like we had round 1, now we're at round 2, and it might actually work. And these guys are still young. They're still getting faster. Granted, men's swimming was ridiculously fast this year as well. But yeah, I think men's swimming absolutely with Saka and a couple other guys is ready to do some work to especially be far more competitive in the ACCs this year, which another sport where we were good this year, as good as we've ever been. Lots of program records, but also a crap ton of new records broken by the ACC standards. So, they are ready to launch for sure next year, and hopefully establish a much better recruiting, I guess, pedigree. Considering Atlanta is also just a massive swimming island with a crap ton of talent at the younger levels.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think my hesitation there being a guy who's maybe a bit of a 5-year long getting used to stretch of Pamputis and Ferraro. It's tough to see them go and say that, wow, like, most potential. To introduce the women and men's tennis teams, the women, obviously they had a great finish to the year in the individual and the doubles draws. They're a team that had to rebuild last year and really bounce back in a way that I think was arguably stronger than probably what we would have expected given all that they lost. And then men's tennis, there's a theme. Super talented, still kind of young, and arguably is on there because despite being so talented and having all this potential, I don't really think we've seen them all line it up yet. So, it's a team that does have the ability to do a lot more. If there's anything we saw from Andres and Marcus's individual accolades this year, there's a lot that they can do there, even with what they've already got. So that's, I don't think there's a clear answer with this one.
I will say my vote here is for the women's tennis team, and especially because of what you mentioned about their success in the NCAA tournament draws, right? Maybe not necessarily the team competition, but the singles and doubles pairings. I mean, the only senior that's graduated, or the only senior that's leaving, or the only person that's leaving is Gia Cohen, and she didn't feature in either of these singles or doubles pairings. And that's not a slight on her per se, but these singles and doubles pairings that appeared at NCAAs were so good that they didn't, like, they're not seniors, right? They're doing this in their freshman or sophomore seasons. They're going to be here for so long, so long still. And that's just a really good sign of a program that's not just rebuilding per se, but it's reloading and it's developing that talent really well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'd still probably put in for men's tennis as just because I think that they have such a high ceiling they haven't gotten to yet, kind of a la maybe softball of last year. I don't know. Jack, do you have a strong lean here? We might be split 3 ways here.
I'm kind of on the tennis. I mean, for as much as I knew about the swimming, I kind of like the tennis front too, because also like the upside with Andres Martin is large too. So yeah, in terms of being able to ride a guy, I think is impactful here, and can give a center for a team to focus on. So I would go men's tennis.
All right, I'm gonna stick with my men's tennis then.
Okay, let's move on to most improved athlete. I will read out your nominees. Jin Saleo, Georgia Tech softball. Mallory Black, also Georgia Tech softball. Aaron Moss, Georgia Tech volleyball. Rodney Howard, men's basketball. Andrew Jenkins, baseball. Keshav Chopra, men's tennis. Bianca Bertolino for volleyball. And Aaliyah Love for women's basketball. Mr. Purdy, let's start with you. What is your pick?
I really liked Saleo a lot because she had the defense, but she found the bat this year. Far better two-way weapon. I really like Andrew Jenkins as well because, I mean, he's basically a Chipper Jones 2.0 except he doesn't play third base, but he's wearing 10. He's got the walk-up song, and he just hits bombs. So very critical in terms of keeping the team 11, kind of being that secret. Oh yeah, we also have this guy behind Simpson and Parada to drive in runs. So in that sense, I think that's just so cool that he came up with that. Aaliyah Love had 2 career nights this season. She had a 20-pointer, and then like a couple weeks later had a 26-point game, which kept us afloat through ACC play, which is huge. Bertolino, while he's a freshman, definitely came a long way from the beginning of the season to the end in terms of being like, okay, you got to deal with her if you're trying to dig out some blocks. Picking one, I think I actually have to go with Jenkins here, honestly, because that's just such a massive weapon in the cleanup spot, and you've already had to face the Tech's home run all-time leader, also, and then the batting average and the hitting champ this year for the entire D1 level. So I think, all things considered, I really like Jenkins for this.
Mr. Grant, how about you?
Yeah, that was a name that I threw out there. I think Aaliyah Love definitely deserves a mention, just with the increased slate that she was asked to take on with the departures, injuries, things like that the team
she was not supposed to be a starter this year.
Yeah, this team succeeded for a great portion of the year ahead of schedule on a development. So I think that is at least a little bit of a shout out. I think Jenkins is a good call, but I don't know. Aaron Moss, I think, deserves a second look too. Akshay, where are you at with it?
I respect both of your opinions, but I also respect both of your rights to be wrong. It's Mallory Black. It's not even close. She was not
proved. Then sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting.
No, it's not even close. It's Mallory Black. She became a reliable bat in the lineup this year for Georgia Tech softball, and her resurgence at the plate, and her resurgence, it wasn't even a resurgence, it was a surgence. Right? She was hitting right at the Mendoza line, if not worse, for a bunch of last year. And I remember us having a conversation last year, Jake, about how maybe we should look into other options at third base. Like, is it worth it to have someone who can't really hit, who's not seeing the ball that well, still in the lineup, especially when you get into the meat of the season and you're on this sort of losing kick. But you saw what happens when she when she's able to find the ball and find the strike zone, right? She's hit it. She was, I think, top 5 amongst Georgia Tech hitters. I don't have the stats in front of me right now. And she was always reliable in the field, right? So I don't think it's even close. It's her. She's a sizable reason for the amount of success that Georgia Tech had in baseball this year.
Yeah.
I know Jake has some personal reasons to dislike this, and we can't necessarily disclose those. However, I stand by my pick.
That's a weird way to put that, my guy. I can just say my sister's a corner infielder. Like, that's not a problem. No, I don't know. I think I don't know. I don't want to budge.
It's
Jack,
a good pick. It's a good pick.
I think we were closer on Jenkins than either of us are to going for that, right?
Well, sure. Yeah. I think also because we watched more Jenkins, we've got the recency bias with Jenkins a little bit here too. Yeah. But no, I do remember, like, Mallory Black last year not cutting it all the way. And then, I think I think she absolutely probably is.
I think you guys are right. Here. I think you guys are right. I've gotten there.
She's the real pick.
Go.
Actually, not even close, but maybe this one will be close. Let's talk about newbie of the year. Your nominees for Mr. Grant, Mr. Purdy: Chandler Dennis, Georgia Tech softball; Dina Strautmana of Georgia Tech women's basketball; Bianca Bertolino makes another appearance, Georgia Tech volleyball; Chandler Simpson, baseball; Kyrick McGowan, football; Paula Pimentel, volleyball; Kate Sharabura, women's tennis; and Auburn Dupree, softball. Mr. Grant, we start with you. Give me your newbie of the year.
It's Chandler Simpson. You saw how the team changed with him on the shelf. He was the most electric part of a Georgia Tech offense that could not be stopped. He brought a dimension that I think was something we've talked about Tech wanting to employ for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I think that just the exceptional level that he played at, and just the clear ability to see what the team looked like without him. Is this recency bias? Yes. Do I think Chandler Dennis also deserves a shout out here? Yes. I think it's Chandler Simpson.
Mr. Purdy.
If we had 3 Chandlers, we should have had a best Chandler award here as well, but we only had 2. So no, it's gotta be Chandler. I mean, yeah, it's Simpson. Like, it's not even close. That man, I mean, yeah, so A leads D1 in average. So that's something. I want to know what he thinks when he's hitting, because he just is so good. It's about serving it the other way. He wasn't hitting for dingers, but then also like just scored from second on routine fly balls. Like, this man is an animal everywhere. He's so freaking good. Just in terms of the exceptional extra characteristics he had this year, that puts him over the top. McGowan, not all the way getting there. Stroutman was at times great, but then also would just miss shots badly sometimes. Bertolino was critical, but could have survived without her in some spots. And then Auburn Dupree, very good in the outfield, but then also just still far more pieces around there. Chandler Simpson defined an offense where homers was the defining trait. It's a weird little thing here that they had going on. So yeah, no, it's Simpson for me.
So I don't know how to tell both of you this, but I'm going to disagree with you yet again. I will say Chandler Simpson is a very close second for me. I think Jake brings up a really good point when you talk about how he brings a different dimension, right? Georgia Tech is not a team, even before this year, was not a team that really made a lot of use of the base paths. They didn't take those opportunities. You saw Chandler Simpson come in, and you knew that this was his MO from UAB, his time at UAB. He was going to come in, he was going to steal bases, he was going to make opposing catchers work for it, and opposing pitchers. He was going to put the fear of God in them around the base paths. And that's what he did, right? He gets on base, he steals bags, he scores runs. That's basically what he did. And especially starting at the top of the lineup for a bunch of the year, right? That's a perfect way to start games. Get someone on base and start bringing him around, regardless of whether it's with the long ball, regardless of whether it's small ball. And his consistency was something incredibly notable, right? Like, we talked a lot when Luke Waddell was on this roster that he was a hit machine. He would always hit a bloop single. He'd always hit a dribbler into the infield. He'd plop one right in between the gaps. That's what Chandler Simpson did. But the added dimension with Simpson, other than compared to Waddell, was that base running quality, right? That he could steal bags at will. But again, I say all that with giving him a close second place. I still think number one here is Chandler Dennis. And we talked about her earlier in the segment with regards to softball being the most improved team. It is amazing what another quality arm will do for a program. You saw them improve on the mound, or you saw them improve at the plate. We talked about Mallory Black in the last bit, but you also, it was just that little bit of defense, that little bit of not putting that many balls into play, or as many balls into the play as they'd done in previous years, helped them out tremendously. Or regardless of whether those balls were getting in play in via soft contact, whether they were strikeouts, what have you, just having someone else that was trustworthy did wonders for this program. And that's why I am convinced that Chandler Dennis and softball are the one here.
That's good. Not to split another award, but I think we landed on 2 different things here. I think we landed on most outstanding newbie and most valuable newbie. Chandler Dennis, I would say, absolutely is the most valuable in terms of what they brought overall. But in terms of outstanding performance, that might be where Chandler lines up.
Wow, we couldn't even pick our favorite Chandler newbie of the year.
I know, I did it. Yeah, no, it's the Chandlers are just the newbie. They just don't even put a last name. Newbie of the year goes to Chandler.
There you go.
There we go. Also, a good benefit or a good point to bring up here. Chandler Dennis, I think, still has 1, maybe 2 years of eligibility left. Chandler Simpson, I do believe, is done.
He better get drafted. That man's got to get drafted.
He absolutely should be drafted. Well, we are down to our final award, most valuable athlete. For this one, we picked one for every sport and hope to generate some debate and embrace that debate as we move forward to a winner. I will read out all the nominees and then we will discuss, gentlemen. Women's basketball, Lorella Kubai. Men's basketball, Michael DeVoe. Cross country, track and field, Nicole Fegans. Men's swim and dive, Kaya Pampudis. Women's swim and dive, Cameron Hidalgo. Baseball, Kevin Parada. Softball, somehow we couldn't pick just one. Emma Kalf, Trisha Awald, and Blake Nelliman. Take your pick. Football, Jameer Gibbs. Men's tennis, Andres Martin. Women's tennis, Carol Lee. Men's golf, Christo Lemprecht. And volleyball, again, we couldn't pick just one. Julia Bergman, Mariana Brambilla, Maddie McKissick, or Paula Pimentel. Mr. Purdy, you have the con first. Who is your pick for 21-22 most valuable athlete?
There is so much here to go through. And I think also we're not done seeing how this plays out. I think we could have different picks based on the post-tech realities of these athletes as well. Because, I mean, like, Kubai got drafted, but, like, Parada's going to get drafted. What does that say about his legacy? We'll see about Gibbs with Alabama this year in terms of, like, okay, if he's so good at Bama, what does that say about really how important really was he here? And so I think there's a lot of unanswered still with this, which is something. Let me go through the record setters here, like the ones that like set legitimate school records that are going to hold probably for a while. Kubai's got the rebounding record, and I think she might have the minutes played. I don't know because she got that extra year in there. Fegans broke every record she could get her hand on for us. Pampudis got a couple records. Parada got the home run record, which is not nothing. And then I think I did.
Awald has a walks record.
It was the walks record. Did Bergman set a kill record at all? Do we know if there was anything there? There might be.
Probably.
We'll
chalk that one down as a probably. I think McKissick has a sets record.
Oh, yeah, she's got to have that. Yeah.
Let me see if the volleyball media guide has been updated.
All right, you check that. So I haven't actually picked someone, so I'll pick someone.
It has not. Sorry.
Okay, so in terms of there's the record setters, and then okay, how are you defining valuable? Because like there's also like the whole thing about like, well, Russell Westbrook got one when he got the triple double, but was he really the most valuable? Who knows?
There's also the Peyton Manning. There's also the Peyton Manning most valuable theory here of the season that Manning didn't play with the Colts and they went 1-15.
Yes, so, yeah. There's a lot of things here. So in that sense, it's like okay, without Nicole Fegans, is our track and field even worth talking about? Maybe not. Is men's basketball remotely good without DeVoe? Like, yeah, kinda. The fact Jameer Gibbs was literally half our offensive output is something, and is now going to be RB1 at Bama. Like, good God. Lamprecht also was really good for golf, but we had a couple other guys down there. And volleyball had a supporting cast, so I don't really want to. Bergman would be my pick there if there was one, but I don't think I want to do that. So I'm totally deciding this on the spot. I think, oh God, it's hard to reward football at all and give this to Gibbs because I think you have to win. You have to win. Winning matters here. So it's not Gibbs. That rules out DeVoe. I think that sadly rules out Fegans as well to some extent as well. I think I'm gonna have to give this to. Oh, shoot, man.
You're stalling.
Yeah, I'm giving this to. I know. I'm giving this to Kubai, not because I'm wearing the jersey on my back, but
wow.
There is a leadership aspect that Kubai has that was critical to that team being successful. If Kubai was off the floor, women's basketball sucked. That's just straight up. We were a bad team without her on the floor. She had 2 games where she was hurt last second. Thankfully, late in game. Actually, no, one was during the ACC tournament, and she was just out for a while, and we barely could scrape by, like just barely. Without her and Hermosa on the floor, we were toast. Unless we played a bad team, and the ACC was great. So, yeah, I'm giving it to Kubai.
I'm going to go second because I feel like Mr. Grant is going to have some very interesting opinions about about this list. I tipped my pick, I think, with the Peyton Manning thing. I think it's Gibbs. I think Gibbs has this one locked up. I understand what you mean, Jack, when you say that winning has to matter. At the same time, you have to consider that the man was most of our offense and left for the arguable best team in the country and will start. It is the prospective starter there.
Yeah, that's the tension point. That's the tension point.
Right. And there's a quality to that. there's an unspoken quality to that. Well, not even unspoken. It's a very well trodden
doing it
path
now
here in terms of exactly in terms of the quality that kind of evaluation brings, right? And I think it's him by a significant margin, right? Like this team is going to be different next year, and they're going to have to find a way to replace a guy that they relied on, not just for runs out of the backfield, but for catching balls out of the backfield and for doing things after the catch, right? He was making defenders miss. He was very light on his feet.
Yeah.
There's a moment from, I want to say it's from the 2020, it might have been from the 2020 season, that Jake and I were talking about in a previous episode. I think it's from the Louisville game where you see where Gibbs hurdles a defender to score, and you see this really awesome picture of Sims and Gibbs celebrating in the end zone together. And Jake made a really salient point that now becomes more and more salient by the day, that picture would define, for better or for worse, the Collins era. And that's what I keep coming back to, right? It's these guys were poised to be a very explosive, very exciting combination at Georgia Tech, and now half of that picture is gone.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not trying to end this episode on a sad note. I just want to make sure that we understand what I want to make the point.
The reality of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the reality of it. It's like value, how you define player value is by how important they are to the team. And if you're, at least that's how I define it. And if you're saying that Jahmyr Gibbs was this centerpiece of a Jeff Collins recruiting class and the team, and backed that sort of pedigree up with this production, and has now taken those talents to Tuscaloosa, yeah, he's the most valuable player. He's the most valuable athlete.
All right, left turn. I don't think you're wrong there. I just winning matters to me, one thing. And as much as I love watching Jahmyr Gibbs, as much as he's a very talented athlete, so does staying, right? Like it means a lot to the program what Kabai was able to do in 5 years at Tech, right? It means a lot to the program what Fegans was able to do in 5 years at Tech. It means a lot to the program what Pamputis and Hidalgo were able to do at Tech. Yes, Parada, go get your money. Mike DeVoe, 4 great years. Go get your money. Go get that bread.
He'll get G League.
Awald 4 years, but transferred in after freshman year at Kennesaw. Like that. She led the team in on base, in batting, in the things that Emma Koff didn't lead in. Right? They were great combo one another. That's a tough one to split hairs on. Liam Martin, obviously.
That's why we gave him 3 nominations.
Andres Martin is gonna go make money as a professional someday too. Like that's an inevitable thing. Christo Lamprecht, a man we don't talk about enough on this podcast, just the exceptional play. And then like, you can't tell me that. And my first exposure to the rebirth of volleyball. Yes. I've been a volleyball stan since my first sporting event as a Tech student was UGA game, 2016, my freshman year. So yes, been a fan of the program a long time, but like, I know we discussed those 4 nominees, Brent Bia, just what she's meant to the program in opening. I mean, obviously Coach Collier being from Recife, all that good stuff. Obviously there's a Brazil pipeline there, but like showing that was possible. And, I love Berkman, love McKissick, love Pimentel. Like what she's meant to the program is just exceptional. And with that, like, maybe this is my swimming bias coming back to me, but Cameron Hidalgo finished top 25 at NCAAs by herself. Well, we got like 4 points from, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on the name. Oh, shoot.
The 200 butterfly swimmer. I don't know. I know who you're talking about.
No. It was was it Bradescu? Anyways, one of the other divers scored some points on the platform. But like, even if you discard that, like it was a top 30 finish or something like that. This was not this year, but the year before. Like that is acceptable. Am I also super biased because she was a mechanical engineer and really good at engineering? Yes, but also like the exceptional top to bottom performance of what that meant to that team. Yes, but winning matters. And she won. Like loved Nicole Fegans and her contributions to this program. Like you don't get trophies for 30th place, but I don't think you can have a most valuable athlete with like if you're the reason that the most successful finish at NCAAs in program history happened, that's high value. So
don't you hate it when the voters make a seasonal award a career award? Don't you just hate it?
Ooh,
He's done
is
the
that what you're
Heisman
going
thing
for?
again. He's
Really
done the
is
Heisman
something
thing
here.
again.
Really is something here.
Oh, I'm getting called out. I mean,
Really
but
is.
at that rate too, my logic for Pamputis doesn't stand either, because I would use the same thing and apply it to him because he and Ferraro were the guys. They were the guys that built that program.
Fine. Your answer is quite admirable. I will admit you went off the beaten path, and I will give you credit for that.
I don't think I'm right, but I'll die on the hill.
We had three different methodologies here, which I think is cool here. Like I was winning and now, you were winning in the past, and Akshay was
no winning
Manning syndrome.
no winning, but like very valid. Like okay, what like in just terms of like the increase in the volatility of what happens with and without an athlete. So
right, I mean, there's like you said, there's current narrative, there's past narrative, and then there's the sort of like the analytical perspective of on off.
I'm gonna throw it for a loop. If we're gonna combine all of these thoughts, right? That this year matters, it's not a career award. That winning matters, that it's not a congrats, you led a dumpster fire to, a faucet or whatever. I think you go Bergman. Bergman, maybe I could see Cal for AWOL, but it's too close there. Or Bergman, Brambilla, like it's gotta be one of those.
I just give this award to the entire volleyball team. Like I kill the award, kill the athlete bit. No. I'll give it to the entire volleyball.
We gave them team of the year. We gave them team of the year.
We did.
No, we'll just give them the same. We'll get rules are fake.
Give them team of the year twice. That makes no sense.
It's our podcast. I get to make the rules.
We ended the podcast by not awarding a player of the year.
We awarded 3 of them, to be fair, and then you tried to hold to 3 different sets of rules at the same time.
Yeah.
No. I have my secret award at the end here. Which,
all right, go for it.
Here's how this is. Well, it's not really an award. This is with no explanation on a letter scale. Grade Tech athletics right now.
Oh no.
Oh God. I have so
many thoughts. End of season grade.
With no explanation.
Don't explain. Don't just gut feeling. Don't explain. Just gut feeling.
I have so many thoughts, and all of them are written down in a 5,000 word Google Doc that we haven't.
All right, I'm just giving you my letter now. B-.
Yeah, I was gonna go C, and even C.
C+.
Don't think about it. Okay, good. All right, C+.
C+. We're all in the same ballpark.
All right. That I think that's good. Through all of this, without our gut check was in a good range.
Can I say a thing?
Go for it.
That I just realized. We didn't win an ACC championship this year.
We did not.
Closest we came was
golf.
A putt away.
Golf got close. Yep.
Womp womp.
All right. NBA finals in 1 minute. We done here?
He knows where his priorities are. I gotta say that, Mr. Grant.
My quiche is so cold, y'all. It's ice cold. Thank you.
I mean, this is at least an hour long episode. Mr. Grant, do you have anything else for us before we head out?
Do I? I mean, I could. Give
no, you don't, Mr. Purdy. Do you have anything else for us before we head out?
I do not. It was a good time recording, though.
Absolutely, Mr. Grant. Send us home. Take it away.
All right. Everyone who listens to this podcast, you've now heard us do our end of the year awards. If something comes to mind throughout the year next year, please at us so we don't forget about the good stuff that happens in the fall, because that was our biggest brainstorming problem. In the meantime, you can add us at FTRS blog on Twitter. You can comment, like, subscribe, whatever gets this podcast into your feed. You can find us on from the rumbleseat.com. Leave your comments, questions, suggestions, improvements. Off-season ideas. Anywhere. We'd love to hear them. You can find me at Jake Grant 98, Jack at Jack Nicholas, and Akshay nowhere because he cannot be found. That's a lie, but I'm going to leave it at that. With that, it's been a great athletic and academic year. We'll be back for another one in the fall. We'll be here throughout the off season with off season content as well. Thank you, and go Jackets.